Are you thinking about going on a solo backpacking trip, but you're letting your fears or even other people's fears hold you back from getting to the trailhead? In this video, I'm going to share with you 10 tips that will help you overcome your fears about backpacking solo. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that bell icon to get notified every time I post a new video about backpacking, backpacking food, and tips on how to help plan your next backpacking trip. Hey guys, my name is Kathleen, former PCT thru hiker, avid Pacific Northwest day hiker, solo long distance backpacker, and the hungry hiker here on YouTube. When I first decided I wanted to go solo backpacking, I not only had to learn how to overcome my own fears of being out on trail by myself, but I also had to deal with my friends and family's fears of me wanting to go backpacking solo. I'd hear things like, why would you want to go by yourself? Aren't you scared? What if X happens? And what are you going to do if X happens? And are you going to carry a gun? After through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail by myself in 2018 and solo backpacking hundreds of miles in the backcountry over the last few years, I can honestly say I love solo backpacking more so than going on group trips. Now don't get me wrong, I still enjoy going on group backpacking trips, but there's something really special about backpacking solo that keeps me wanting to plan more and more solo trips. If you're convinced and want to give solo backpacking a try, here are 10 tips you need to know that will help you overcome your fears and other people's fears about backpacking solo. Starting with tip number 1. Don't let your fears and other people's fears stop you from getting to the trailhead. It's completely normal and perfectly okay to have fears when it comes to backpacking solo. You might be afraid of being alone out on trail during the day or sleeping alone at camp at night. It could be animal encounters, trail obstacles, coming across shady people, getting lost, running out of food or water, and sometimes it could even be the fear of the unknown and not knowing what to do in a given situation. You don't know what you don't know. The best way to overcome your fears of backpacking solo is to properly plan and prepare to be 100% self-reliant for your backcountry adventures. This starts with trip planning. Trip planning is essential for any successful trip in the backcountry. Trip planning is important because it's the ultimate tool to help reduce the unknown when out on trail. It gives you a better idea of what to expect when you're out there. Trip planning also helps you prepare for managing risk and hazards before having to encounter them out in the backcountry. You always want to be prepared for the worst case scenario. Proper preparation and planning can help prevent a negative outcome and increase your chances of having a successful trip. So here are some trip planning basics. Before you head out for your solo backpacking adventure, you'll want to decide on what the goal is for your trip. What's your trip objective? Is there a certain place you want to get to or camp at? Are you looking to relax? Want to check out a new area? Practice using your gear? Looking to challenge yourself to hike a certain number of miles each day? Knowing why you're out there in the first place will help you plan for the type of trip you want to go on and increase your chances of having a successful trip. Decide where you want to go and then do your research. Check the weather forecast of the area you'll be traveling in. Check road conditions for the roads you'll be driving on. Check trail conditions. Read current trip reports, and then plan your route by using either a paper map, digital map, or both. You'll want to anticipate hazards you may encounter out on trail, which you'll be able to identify through the research you do ahead of time of the area you plan on traveling in. So when you're doing your research, look for potential water crossings, down trees, washouts, and even wildfire. Then you'll want to establish an emergency safety plan for your trip. You'll want to note any alternate routes or exit points in case of bad weather, injury, or trail obstacles. Then you want to make sure and bring the proper gear for your intended trip and forecasted conditions, including the 10 essentials. And then put together a trip itinerary and leave it at home with someone you trust. When it comes to learning how to overcome your fears with backpacking solo, figure out what you're most scared of and then put together a plan on how you'll deal with those fears should you have to face them when out on trail. I've put together the Confident Solo Female Backpacker System, an online backpacking program for women that is designed to help women go from feeling scared and intimidated about solo backpacking to feeling comfortable planning their own adventures so they feel confident going on either their first or their next solo backpacking trip. This comprehensive, self-paced online program will walk students through step-by-step everything they need to know in order to plan, prepare, and build up their confidence to comfortably go on their own solo backpacking adventures. If you're interested in learning more about the Confident Solo Female Backpacker System and want to see if you'd be a good fit for the program, I'll include a link up here and also down below in the video description where you you can sign up for a free one-on-one Zoom call with me where we'll talk about your backpacking goals, and if we decide working together would be a good fit, you'll get an opportunity to enroll in the program during our call. Also, be sure to follow me on Instagram if you want some inspiration on planning your next hike or backpacking trip, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel to get more tips and tricks on how to plan your next outdoor adventure. Get inspired, get excited, and don't let fear keep you away from wanting to get to the trailhead for your own solo backpacking adventures. Tip number 2 for helping you overcome your fear about backpacking solo is practice. Don't practice making it perfect because honestly, there's nothing perfect about backpacking. When it comes to backpacking, it's a learning experience that you'll constantly be improving upon each trip you go on. But practice to help lessen the risk and help make your experience out on trail much more enjoyable. So here's what I mean. Start by going on a solo day hike. If you are new to solo backpacking, start with going on a solo day hike out on a familiar, well-established, popular trail. And then try solo car camping. So once you've had a couple successful solo day hikes under your shoes, then try solo car camping at a drive-in campsite. Instead of sleeping in your car, set up camp at the campsite like you would if you were backpacking, including setting up your tent, your sleep system, camp kitchen, and your food storage. This way, you get the chance to practice setting up camp, sleeping in your tent alone. You'll start to get used to hearing the noise outside overnight, and if you get scared, you'll know that your car is nearby and you can easily pack up camp and go back home if you want to. With car camping, there will more likely be people nearby, making this a less scary experience. And also, depending on the campsite, you might even have amenities nearby like running water, pit toilets, garbage, and picnic tables, so you won't really be roughing it like you were if you were backpacking. Car camping is a great way to practice setting up your camp, using your gear, getting used to sleeping alone in your tent, breaking down camp, and unpacking your pack, all while keeping the whole experience very low risk. Then go on your first solo backpacking trip. So when you're ready, pick a familiar, well-established, well-traveled, low-mileage, less elevation trail for your first solo backpacking trip. With popular, well-traveled trails, there will be more people out on trail, so you won't feel so alone. Choosing a familiar, well-traveled trail means you're more likely to know where you're at and have a less chance of getting lost because the trail will be well marked. By picking a lower mileage, lower elevation hike, you also bring down the risk level for your solo backpacking trip. You set up camp and decide that you want to go back home, you can easily pack up camp and get back to the trailhead in a reasonable amount of time. You can also take a leadership role with planning a group trip. If you're going on a group backpacking trip, practice taking a more leadership role with helping to plan the trip. This can be everything from helping your group members figure out where and when to go, the rules and regulations for the area you want to travel in, and putting together the trip itinerary, to choosing the tent sites for the group when out on trail, locating upcoming water sources, helping to set up camp, and participate in camp chores instead of letting other group members do everything for you. Whatever you decide to do, make sure you always give yourself grace. Practice, practice, practice. Use each backpacking trip, whether it's a solo or group backpacking trip, as a chance to test and then refine whatever you learned after each trip. Tip number 3, don't get lost. A lot of people say one of their biggest fears about solo backpacking is getting lost. One way to not get lost is to stay found by always hiking with a map, whether it's a paper map and compass or a digital map downloaded on an app like All Trails, Gaia GPS, or Far Out. It's not enough to have a map. You also need to know how to read the map and use your navigation skills. Otherwise, these are just dead weight in your pack. If you don't know how to use a paper map and compass, consider taking a navigation course either online or in person. And if you're using a digital map on an app, make sure you know how to use the app. Download the map of the area that you'll be traveling in before leaving cell and Wi-Fi service, and create a route and then save it within your app. Always be aware of your surroundings. Look for landmarks along the trail and double check your map at each trail junction so you always know where you're at and where you're going. Also, if you're using a digital map, make sure your electronic devices are fully charged before getting to the trailhead, and bring an external power bank with you so you have a way to charge your electronic devices out on trail if you need to. Another tip for helping you overcome your fear about backpacking solo is tip number 4. Don't run out of water. Another big fear a lot of people have about solo backpacking is running out of water. A great way to overcome this fear starts with your trip planning before you ever get out on trail. Know how to recognize water sources on a map. When you're putting together your trip itinerary, note any water sources along your anticipated route by looking at the map of the area that you plan on traveling in. Then figure out how much water you think you'll need in between each water source. Make sure you start your trip with enough water to get you to the next water source. Always bring a water filter, know how to use your water filter, and consider carrying a backup water filtration system such as an extra filter or water purification tablets. Tip number 5 to help you overcome your fear about backpacking solo is pack the food you love. In addition to the fear of running out of water, as a solo backpacker, you might have the fear of running out of food when you're out on trail by yourself. A great way to help overcome this fear is to make sure you include meal planning as part of your trip planning process. Once you figure out how many days and nights you'll be out on trail, take the time to create a trail menu for each meal of the day during your trip. You'll want to figure out how many calories you'll need for each day, pack the right amount of food for your intended time out on trail, and don't forget to consider the weight of the food you bring. Also, as part of the hiking 10 essentials, you'll always want to pack 1 extra day's worth of food just in case. When putting together a meal plan for your solo backpacking trip, make sure you pack food you love. Think about the food you enjoy eating at home that you might also enjoy eating out on trail. This could be a quick and easy grocery store backpacking meal you put together yourself, dehydrated meals you put together at home, freeze-dried meals from outdoor retailers, your most favorite snacks, leftover pizza from the night before, or even a fresh deli sandwich you picked up that morning before heading out to the trail. The first meal you have out on trail should be the heaviest, and then after that, each meal and snack should be light in weight since you'll have to carry it in your food bag or bear canister throughout your trip. Tip number 6 for helping you overcome your fear about backpacking solo is be bear aware and know how to deal with wildlife encounters. Part of your trip planning should be to research the potential wildlife in the area you plan on traveling in. Then once you know the types of animals you may encounter out on trail, familiarize yourself with how to deal with these types of wildlife encounters. If you plan on traveling in an area where there have been known bear sightings, make sure you are bear aware. Look for bear activity. Make noise, especially if you're out there solo. You can carry a whistle, bear bells, play music or a podcast out loud, talk out loud, or click your trekking poles together. Be aware of your surroundings. Are there other people out on trail with you? How wide is the trail? Are you traveling through a wide open space or a dense forest? Do you have an exit strategy if you come up on a bear who's blocking the trail? Or is there plenty of room to walk around the bear while giving them plenty of space? Practice proper food storage both on trail and at camp. Carry your food in a rodent-proof, bear-proof bag like an earth sack or hard-sided bear canister. Part of your trip planning should include noting the rules and regulations for proper food storage in the area you plan on traveling in. At camp, store your food away from your sleeping area and cook downwind and away from your sleeping area. If there are metal bear lockers or bear poles nearby, use those options when storing your food at camp. Bring with you whatever makes you feel safe on your solo backpacking trip. This could be a whistle, bear bells, a knife, mace, bear spray, or even a firearm. If you carry mace, bear spray, or any sort of weapon or firearm, make sure you are properly trained on how to use that weapon correctly so you don't injure yourself or others around you. Also, you'll want to make sure the item you choose to use is easy to access in the event of an emergency and not buried in the bottom of your pack. I personally don't carry bear spray or a firearm on any of my solo backpacking trips. I have a whistle on my pack, carry a knife, have my wits, and I make sure that I'm always situationally aware of my surroundings while I'm out there. This is just what has worked for me, and if this doesn't work for you, find what makes you feel safe and train yourself on how to use that item properly and safely prior to your solo backpacking trip. The nice thing about emergency whistles is that they're easy to use and can often be found built into your backpacking chest straps, so double check this before you get out on trail. Keep your whistle where you can easily access it during an emergency. Emergency whistles can be used to call as a distress signal to rescuers of where you're at and can also be used to ward off potential wildlife encounters. Also, if you're using trekking poles can be used to make additional noise, used as a crutch in the event you injure yourself, and can also be used as a weapon in an emergency situation. Depending on where you're traveling, the chances of a deadly animal encounter can be rare and unlikely. The fear of having a wildlife encounter out on trail is a healthy fear, but don't let this fear hold you back from planning your solo backpacking trip. Do your research, know the types of animals you might encounter in the area, and be familiar with how to deal with these types of wildlife encounters before you get out on trail. A lot of times people say that the reason why they don't go solo backpacking is because they don't want to be lonely. Tip number 7 is how to avoid feeling lonely when you're backpacking solo. An easy way to overcome your fear of feeling lonely when solo backpacking is to pack distractions. I love to download my favorite upbeat music and inspiring podcasts to my phone prior to my trip and listen to them either when I'm out on trail during the day or in my tent at night. You can also download books, movies, and games to help you stay entertained while you're at camp by yourself. And if you're someone who likes to journal, bring a journal or journal on your phone once you're at camp for the day. If you find that you get to camp early, have set up camp, and have completed all of your camp chores, consider going on a short day hike in the area, take a nap, or go to sleep early and get a good night's sleep. Also, if you find that you keep getting to camp early and you don't want to, consider hiking bigger mile days and hiking throughout the day longer. The longer and farther you hike each day, the higher the chance you will be more tired once you get to set up camp for the evening. So if you're worried about feeling lonely once you get into camp, plan on spending less time in camp. Come into camp later in the day and exhausted. This way, the only thing you have energy for is to set up camp, eat, and then go to bed for the evening. Tip number 8 is to make sleeping outside as comfortable and safe as possible. I hear a lot of people say that one thing that holds them back from wanting to plan a backpacking trip, let alone a solo backpacking trip, is that they can't get a good night's sleep out on trail. I used to be there. I have had so many really cold and miserable nights out on trail, and I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be that way. Start by investing in a warm and comfortable sleep system. You can save money on clothes and a cooking system, but invest your money in a sleep system if having a good night's sleep out on trail is a priority for you. For me, when I'm out backpacking, if I can't get a good night's sleep, then I have a hard time hiking the next day, and if I can't hike, well, why am I even out there on trail? A sleep system can consist of a warm sleeping bag or quilt, an insulated sleeping pad, and if you're a cold sleeper like me, you might also include a pair of sleeping booties and socks, a sleeping bag liner, and a camp pillow. Once I invested in my sleeping system by getting a 10-degree ultralight quilt along with an insulated sleeping pad with an R value of 6.8, I've been able to sleep out on trail almost as good as I do in my own bed at home. Another way you can make sleeping outside comfortable and not have to spend any money is to camp wherever you feel safe. Instead of setting up camp in a dark, dense forest, choose a tent site that is near or above the tree line in a wide open space. Open spaces tend to stay light out longer. My favorite place to set up camp is always near a natural running water source. Not so close that I'll have animal visitors near my tent overnight, but close enough that I can hear the water running and fall asleep listening to a natural, calming, ambient noise in the background without worrying about hearing twigs breaking throughout the night. Also, another way you can make sleeping outside comfortable without spending any money is to pick a popular and well-traveled trail for your first solo backpacking trip and set up at a tent site with other backpackers nearby. This way, you're still backpacking solo, but you have the comfort knowing that there is someone close by in case of an emergency. And don't forget to pack your distractions to keep you entertained while you're in your tent at night, and consider wearing earplugs if you're someone that has to tune out all the noises around you, including snoring coming from nearby backpackers, in order to get a good night's sleep. Sometimes the fears that might keep you from wanting to try solo backpacking might not even be your own fears, but someone else's fears. So how do you deal with other people's fears of you wanting to go backpacking solo? As someone who has now done a number of successful solo backpacking trips and has hiked hundreds of miles by myself in the backcountry, here are some ways I've been able to manage the fears of my friends and family members who are scared of me wanting to get out for my solo backpacking trips. Share your why for going solo backpacking and tell them why it's important to you. Making videos of my solo backpacking trips is not only my way of helping to inspire others who want to get out for their own solo adventures, but it's also a great way for me to show my friends and family what I'm doing out on trail and share with them why I love solo backpacking so much. Invite your concerned friends and family members to join you out on trail for an overnight backpacking trip. To this day, I haven't had any family members join me out on trail for an overnight trip yet, but I have had a number of friends join me for various backpacking trips over the years. Once we're out on trail together, I can share my favorite trail stories with my friends, which often helps explain why I love solo backpacking so much. I'm also able to show them how prepared I am for solo backpacking, and by the end of our trip, my friends feel so much more confident in my solo backpacking abilities and have probably learned something new about backpacking that they didn't know before. Oftentimes, they're inspired to want to plan their next trip, sometimes wanting to plan a solo backpacking trip of their own. If friends and family members are really concerned with your upcoming solo backpacking trip, offer to share with them the precautions you're taking in order to be safe when you're out on trail. Sometimes sharing how you've planned and prepared for your solo backpacking trip is enough to help put a friend or family member at ease. Share with them your entire trip planning process. Let them know where you plan on going. Share with them the research you've done of the area and the plan you've put in place with possibly dealing with challenges and fears that might come your way once you're out there. If you've been taking any backpacking or navigation or first aid courses, share what you've been learning in those courses you've been taking and how you plan on applying what you've learned in those courses to your solo backpacking trip. You can also offer to make a concerned friend or family member your safety person for your solo backpacking trip. This would mean that you would leave your trip itinerary with them, check in with them throughout your trip if you're able to, give them permission to contact local authorities if they don't hear from you within a given time frame that you've both agreed upon, and make them your first person that you contact as soon as you return from your solo backpacking trip. Consider investing in and carrying either a satellite communicator or a personal locator beacon, a PLB, and know how to use it before getting out on trail. A satellite communicator will generally have two-way messaging and tracking features which help make it really easy for someone at home to be able to follow your journey and have contact with you while you're out on your solo backpacking trip. Having a satellite communicator or PLB, whether you're backpacking solo or in a group, is a great way to be able to reach the outside world in the event of an emergency. Even though these devices come with a high price tag and oftentimes require an additional charge for a subscription service, they often provide peace of mind, which makes the financial investment worth it to both you as a solo backpacker and the concerned friend or family member at home. Remember, other people's fears are a direct reflection of them, not you. Don't let anyone else's fears, even if they are a friend or family member, deter you from wanting to achieve your own solo backpacking goals. And finally, the last tip to help you overcome your fears of backpacking solo is tip number 10, what to do about sketchy people. In all of the many miles I've been out on trail as a solo female backpacker, it seems like the farther I get out on trail, the less likely I am to encounter a sketchy person. As a woman, I actually feel much safer hiking by myself in the backcountry than I do walking alone in any town or city. Why? Because if someone is up to no good, they will more than likely want to sit close to either a trailhead or a road so that they can have a quick getaway. This is why I always recommend getting at least 3 to 5 miles from a trailhead for any of your solo backpacking trips, whether it's your first solo backpacking trip or your next. The farther you can get away from any nearby roads or trailheads, the more likely you are to be safe. The people I've met out on trail while backpacking have been some of the most happy and friendly people I've ever met. And as a solo backpacker, make sure you say hi to the people you come across on trail. Make eye contact and take note of what they're wearing in their pack. Not only is it friendly to say hi to other backpackers, but it's also important to be aware of the people whom you come into contact with out on trail. And while you want to be friendly to the folks you meet out on trail, never disclose any specific information on your solo camping plans to anyone whom you don't know. Keep your intended destination for the evening vague. Don't announce to anyone you don't know that you're backpacking solo. If someone you meet on trail asks if you're by yourself, you can always say that you're with someone else who's behind or ahead of you, and no one out on trail has to know you're out there solo backpacking unless you want them to know and you feel safe telling them so. If you're in a conversation with another backpacker that makes you feel uncomfortable or unsafe, lie and say you're waiting for a friend who's on a bathroom break or off taking pictures, and then quickly excuse yourself from the conversation. Always listen to your gut. Trust your instincts. If something feels off or wrong, change the situation or turn around and go home. You have nothing to prove to anyone. Your safety should always be your number one priority. The same goes for people off trail. Never publicly announce your solo backpacking plans and location online either before or during your trip. Save the solo backpacking social media posts for when you're back at home, safe and sound. And when it comes to setting up your solo backpacking tent site, you can either set up camp with backpackers nearby to help ease your nerves of camping outside by yourself, or if you want to avoid people at camp, set up your tent site away from the established trail and other backpackers. If you're opting to avoid other backpackers at camp, avoid camping shelters, camp far off of the established trail, and camouflage your tent site if you can. Another safety tip for being at camp as a solo backpacker is to make sure you store your shoes inside your tent at night. That way, anyone walking by won't know that you're in your tent by yourself. Whether you decide to camp near other backpackers or away from them, always stay alert and be aware of your surroundings. I really hope this video has been helpful and inspiring for any of you who have been thinking about planning a solo backpacking trip. If you're planning on packing for an overnight backpacking trip in the near future, I've put together a free backpacking gear packing list that is designed to help you get organized when planning your next trip. Get your free packing list by clicking the link in the video description below. If you like this video and got some value out of it, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the bell icon to get notified every time new videos are posted. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy trails and keep on trucking.